Hello and welcome to this edition of Ringside Digest. I'm your host Kirk Day, along with my co-host Nick Miller, and in this video, we're going to be doing something a tiny bit different. We're going to be going over the teams that have been eliminated from the playoffs and what they could do in the offseason and moving on from the future. We're going to be doing a video for each team, and in this video, we got the Winnipeg Jets. So we're going to be kind of going over the three options that we think that they could possibly do. May not be the same for every team, but we got three for the Winnipeg Jets here today. So before we get into this video, make sure to subscribe if you want to see more content. We're going to be having news videos going out throughout the playoffs, updates on the scores, playoff recaps, playoff analysis. We're going to be also having videos like this where we're going over the teams of what they could do next, what's next for them, because we know some teams are in a bit of a sticky situation coming out of the playoffs, missing the playoffs by a few points, or just absolutely stinking. So make sure to subscribe if you want to see that, and we're going to go on to our first option of what we think the Winnipeg Jets could do here, which is just go all in. There's a few players on the Winnipeg Jets this year who they said that they voiced their concern that they're not really willing to go into a rebuild. They feel like they have what it takes to win. They just maybe need a few more pieces. So as going in all in, those players would be like Blake Wheeler, Connor Hellebuyck. They kind of voiced their opinions on it. Connor Hellebuyck said he's feeling like that he don't have much left. He's feeling that he's close, but he don't have too much left. So, going all in, you have a few options. There's a big pool of UFAs that are available this year. Some guys just like Patrick Kane, Tyler Bertuzzi, just to name a few. They may be re-signing with the teams they're on right now. They may be going somewhere else. But there's a whole bunch of them. It was too much to even put a list of a screenshot in. There's way too many. But, there's a few things you have to explore in this situation. Because you do have a bit of an issue with the cap space. You have guys like Pierre-Luc Dubois, who we have no idea what will happen with. He's an RFA, but he's making $6 million. Don't know if he'll want to stay or not. But you can see here that right now, this is right now, not the offseason, the Winnipeg Jets have $764K. That's not a lot, but you have a few guys that you can see here down at the bottom of the list. They're kind of like $750K million players that will be expiring, as well as Pierre-Luc Dubois. And on the defense here, you kind of have Logan Stanley and Dylan Sandberg. So they're going to have to do something to be able to get the cap to go all in, but if they want to make those players happy, because Blake Wheeler wasn't too happy going into this offseason with what their coach had to say, they're going to have to do something to make it go all in for those players if they want to make them stay. So what do you think about this option, Nick? What do you think about the all-in option for the Winnipeg Jets?
Well, with the mess that the Jets are in with the cap space and all that stuff, with Pierre-Luc Dubois, obviously, I know a lot of fans of my team, Canadians, are very, very interested in what Pierre-Luc Dubois would bring to the table and how we'd be able to get him. But moving on to the Jets themselves, I really don't think this team does have what it takes anymore. I think this team had what it takes back in 2017-18 when the right side was Bufflin, Trouba, and Myers, and then the left side was Morrissey, Sherratt, and Enstrom. That was a really good team. But those guys, obviously they're not good anymore. Dustin Bufflin doesn't even play in the league anymore. But Morrissey, if you look at their defense, Morrissey has, I think it's a $6.2 million contract. That's a bargain for Josh Morrissey. But then again, you look at Nate Schmidt, and he has a $5.9 million cap hit. So that's not something that you want to have on Nate Schmidt. I don't think this team has enough big pieces to be able to go all in. I don't like this option for the Jets.
No, I do agree with you. They would have to do some big off-season splashes. And there's a situation which they could do, which we're going to be talking about in option 3, similar to what Anaheim did with John Klingberg this offseason. So we'll get to that. So we're just going to go to the second option here, because I do agree with you. I don't think that is the right option. They don't want to risk what they have right now, because they don't have the best set of prospects either. They don't have too many. They have some good ones. They don't have a high quantity. So we're just going to go to our second option here, what the Jets could do, which is just a complete rebuild. I don't mind this option, because you have guys who are like Cole Perfetti, Chaz Lucius, Brad Lambert, Ville Heinola, who are, Cole Perfetti's in the NHL, but the rest of those guys are in the AHL. Their time has to come soon to be able to play in the NHL, because I know Chaz Lucius, I believe, is 19, Ville Heinola is 22. These guys, I think they could have an option in the NHL. I think they would have a good chance to be able to play, because those guys would be your new setup of a core going into a rebuild. You would have to assume if that happens, though, they would trade Scheifele, Wheeler, Nate Schmidt would have to go. You can't have that contract holding around during a rebuild. Possibly Hellebuyck, you never know, because there's definitely some teams who would want a Hellebuyck-style goalie who would need that for a playoff run. That he is a fantastic goalie, top 5, maybe even top 3 in the NHL right now. So there's some teams that would be needing to get players like this, that just to get him out. And like, it's a good option for the Winnipeg Jets because they have a lot of that. A lot of guys who are pieces to add to Stanley Cup hopeful teams. Like I said, just like Wheeler, Scheifele. So I don't think that's a bad option. The only thing is about a rebuild, I don't think Kevin Cheveldayoff is the right guy to conduct a rebuild for the Winnipeg Jets. I think you'd need to rebuild from the top down. Management, probably not Rick Bowness. He's a pretty good coach, but GM, I don't like Cheveldayoff for a rebuild. What do you think about this option, Nick? The rebuild one.
Well, I think the rebuild is definitely the better option as opposed to going all in and just, signing a bunch of guys like for, trying to really just go at something that you don't really have, something that you're not sure about. Like you're not going to go in and sign a guy that's like, you're not going to sign a guy to a long-term contract. You're going to have to sign him to a short-term contract. And I would say a short-term contract is something that not a lot of guys in this free agent market are going to want. I would say that they're going to want a bigger contract. So I would say this is probably the better option, like a full rebuild, because you have the advantage right now. You have pieces that would fetch you a lot of value right now, but down the road in a couple of years, they might not. So
Yep.
Connor Hellebuck, while he's at his best, not in the playoffs, but during the regular season, Connor Hellebuck was at his best. And maybe Mark Scheifele, who had a pretty good goal-scoring season this year. He's one of the top centers in the league, probably a top 15 center in the league. So you'd kind of like to have that if you're a team trading for a guy like a rental piece or whatever. And Pierre-Luc Dubois definitely could get some value. So there are a lot of players I think the Jets could trade away and get some value and get ahead of the whole situation here.
Yeah, I do agree with you. And like you can see here, like you said with Wheeler and Scheifele, they have next year they'll be expiring. And you have Wheeler 8.2 and Scheifele at 6.1, which is an absolutely fantastic contract. I feel like people would want those guys. They're still good. They're not as good as they once were, but they're still very good players. Getting those out early, I think people will want, going to the offseason, instead of going at the deadline where you can get a whole season out of them rather than 20 games or so. So I do think that's a pretty good option. But I think that my favorite one will be the next one that we're going to go over.
Okay, I would also like to say that Blake Wheeler, he does have a very big cap hit, but at the same time, if he's an expiring contract, we've seen what teams can do with the cap gymnastics this year. I don't think it'd be as hard to move him as people think, because you can get that down 50%, and you can get another team to retain about, I think, 50% as well.
Yeah.
So you can get him down to like about 2 million or like 1 point something million. So I don't think that'd be very tough to move. Blake Wheeler's another one.
I think it would end up being like 2.3 or something, which is, for Blake Wheeler's not a bad idea. Also, the same thing with Scheifele. If you do that, you can get him down to about like 1.5. So some options to explore. Don't know if this is the one, but I like this next one. That will stem from Jesse Pollock from Bar Down. I have a tweet here from him. But is wait for the trade deadline is what it is. You have to wait and see. Like, that's not a bad idea to wait and see. This is what Jesse said right here. This is what I honestly think will happen with the Jets. We're not going to move anyone in the offseason, but if we're not in a playoff position come the deadline next year, we'll start moving significant pieces and building towards our future. And then he says, what do you think will happen? But I do very much like this idea, because they can kind of do an Anaheim Ducks style of what they did with John Klingberg this year. They signed him to a 1-year contract in the offseason from the Dallas Stars and traded him to the Minnesota Wild at the deadline for 50-50%. It's not a bad idea, because they can get those pieces. John Klinger was a good defenseman, didn't play as good as he wanted to on Anaheim, but if you do that, that's kind of your all-in situation. Get these guys, if you can get them for 1 year, some older guys, some pretty good guys, get them for 1 year, try and see if you can make the playoffs, and if your team if it doesn't work, that's when you can start selling them 50% like they did with Klingberg, which I don't mind at all. So if you're not in a playoff spot, that's when you start the rebuild. But so it does help the Wheeler and the Hellebuck idea of thinking they're close, not wanting a rebuild. If they can give them 1 more year and the Jets can prove to them that no, we're not close. You need a rebuild. That'll be the telltale. You get the guys to help them in their decision. You can try it. If it don't work, that's when you start the rebuild. Just say sorry, we couldn't do it, and get that one done. So what do you think about this one, Nick? You get a taste of both worlds, really, from the all-in and the rebuild standpoint, depending on what happens in your season.
Yeah, I think this one is probably the best option because if you can get those guys, now I said you would like these guys probably won't want a 1 year contract in the free agent market this year. Maybe the trade market's open. We don't know who's going to be available yet because the season hasn't ended. There could be something happen in one of these games that makes a player like a 2 year contract, like 750K player could be a hero in one of these series, and they could get traded because the team can't afford them or something like that. I wouldn't mind seeing the Jets do this. Maybe so, if they can, if one of these players wants like a 1 year deal, you can pay them whatever you can. We don't know what their cap situation's gonna be like after the season. They could trade away someone or whatever. This would be a good option because you can get to a point in the season where you say we're going to make the playoffs. We're pretty sure of that. And the team looks like it can be a contender. These guys are working hard, like whatever. Or you can get to the point where you say this team's not going to make the playoffs. The team has proven, like you said, that we need to go through a rebuild. We can't afford to go through this and not get anything for our assets. So we're going to trade the guys that we signed to 1 year contracts for assets like picks and prospects, and some of the guys they already have on the team, like Wheeler and Scheifele, and maybe even Hellebuck or whoever else. I like this option because you can control your own destiny when you have this option around. Because if you decide to sign all these guys and make the playoffs and go for last run, whatever, you tried your hardest, you got in the playoffs, and you played well. But if you sign these guys and then you're bad, then you can trade them off, and it still works out either way. Because you either want one more run or you either want to get into a rebuild. And I think this option still keeps both open up until the trade deadline next year. And I really like this for the Jets.
Yeah, I do as well, because it gets you to that point where you know it's do or die at that point. At the trade deadline, you know, it's a pretty telltale sign at that point. You could be pretty close, but odds are you'll know if you're going to be around that time in or out. Because we knew with the Leafs and the Lightning, it was close to the trade deadline that we knew they were going to be playing each other in the first round. So that'll just say it right there. You know well in advance what your rest of your season is going to be like at the trade deadline. So that's all we got for this video with the Winnipeg Jets. Let us know what you guys think in the comments, and also make sure to like the video if you like this style of video, because we're going to be doing this with all the eliminated teams from the first round and as they come out now in the future, in the second round, conference finals and the finals. So, if you liked the video, make sure to like it, and make sure to subscribe, like I said at the beginning of the video, if you want to see more content like this, stuff, recaps and everything. It's going to be very, very exciting. Hope you liked the video. Thank you for watching.